Well, hello out there to everyone, and I want to welcome you once again to another edition of the WGSD-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. And of course, I'm your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert, and I want to thank you for joining us tonight, whether it's live or you watch us on the recordings. We appreciate your participation in the emails and messages we get, and it's thanks to you, our audience, that we were able to make a list of top 25 podcast to watch here in Northern Virginia. So we thank you for that, and we appreciate your support and your participation. Of course, before we get started with our guest tonight, I want to take just a moment to talk about our sponsors. And of course, first we have Nationwide IT Services. NIS is a service-disabled veteran-owned small business owned by retired Army Warrant Officer C.K. Park. CK and his crew have offices all over the United States supporting both federal and private sector contracts and businesses. Whether you need help with IT, security, training, professional development, whatever it is your business may need, contact CK and his crew, and they will be more than happy to talk with you. He's got a great crew, and I will tell you that CK supports the hiring of veterans, which we really appreciate as well. I also want to thank Hill and Ponton, PA, Veterans Disability Attorneys in Florida. Hill and Ponton's been in business for over 30 years, and folks, they also provide on their website, if you go there, hillandponton.com, you're going to find free informational videos about veterans benefits and various topics with the Veterans Administration. They also have live podcasts they do with information. And if you're in need of assistance in navigating the VA's myriad of requirements and processes, they have experts there that can help you and your family do that as well. So give them a look. If you need help, take a look at the website and see what they can do for you. All right, let's get into tonight's show. And of course, I want to welcome tonight's guest, Lieutenant Colonel retired and Chaplain Delton Nichols. Delton is, I saw there, he's a native of Canton, Mississippi. And of course, I spent my formidable years in junior high and high school growing up in Gulfport. So, we weren't too far apart. But Delton has a BA in business administration from Morehouse College in Atlanta. Then he shifted over and got went to the School of Religion there also in Morehouse, and then later got a Master of Divinity from, did I see that right? Princeton.
Yes, that's correct.
Wow. I when I saw that, I was impressed. I said, wow, Princeton. So, it's interesting that, you came on, got your education in business administration, and then shifted over to, divinity and religion and became a chaplain. And then, of course, spent a lot of your military career teaching Army professional ethics and various assignments, with the Chaplain's Corps and the Command and General Staff College, which we're going to talk about a little bit. Now, you spent 18 years and was offered a chance to retire a couple years early by the Army. So there are a lot of people say, wait a minute, how do you do 18 years and retire? They did have those programs, and I do remember there were some of them early outs for enlisted as well. But we want to thank you for that service and welcome you to our show tonight.
Thank you, Paul. Glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, and it's I got to tell you, I met some pretty good Army chaplains while I was on active duty, and especially when I was a first sergeant, we had some chaplains who were definitely active in helping soldiers from our unit through a number of things, family, crisis and things like that. And the work that you guys did in the Chaplain's Corps was just amazing. And some of the things that I saw those chaplains do is a credit to what you guys did. So, I want to thank you for that as well.
Oh, thank you.
So so I have to ask you though, you started off in business administration. How did you make that shift from, a regular college degree and get into, I don't want to call it the religious field, so to speak, but, how did you get into, the ministry and make that change. And then, of course, your degrees and follow on. How did that happen?
So, Paul, since I was about 17 years old, I always felt that I had to do something, and it was a burning feeling. I just knew, but I didn't know exactly what it was. It's like, you see something is coming in the future, but you can't put your finger on it right now.
Yeah.
So when I went to college, very excited about business administration and had planned on getting a MBA.
Yeah.
However, in the second semester of my junior year at Morehouse, I received a calling into ministry, and all I could think about, it was like this divine presence. All I could think about was, being in the ministry.
Yeah.
And so for us ministers, we call that the calling.
Yeah.
God calling us. And it was so strong that I could not have one foot here and one foot there. And I made a choice, a conscious decision, that a Master of Divinity would be much more important and in line with my calling than a Master of Business Administration.
Yeah.
So that's when my plans changed. And that was like around February of 1974. And I was all into the ministry, no turning back.
Yeah. I mean, I have to tell you, which I'm very familiar with, because I grew up, and I know that you were denominationally, you were a Baptist,
Yes,
still are, as far as I understand.
yes.
And I grew up in a Southern Baptist church down south.
Mhm.
So, I remember those days very well, going to church with my mom on Sundays and often on Wednesday nights, and, things like that, growing up in a Baptist church down south. So I remember those days. We were very close to our church pastor. In fact, funny story very quickly, they used to come over our house for dinner every couple of months, or Sunday afternoon, or, like on a Saturday night. And our pastor had a very good sense of humor.
Huh?
And of course, he was a younger pastor. He was in his early 30s, I think, at the time. And there I was, a high school kid. And I remember sitting across the table from him, and I asked him, I said, Brother Futrell, could you pass me a biscuit? And about 3 seconds later, here come a biscuit flying down across the table through the air. My mom's jaw just dropped. She could not believe our pastor did that. But you pastors and chaplains are people too.
Yes.
And the people seem to forget that you're regular people and you're humans, and you just take up a calling that's a little different.
Yeah.
So I noticed that when you went through school, you ended up. How did you end up in the military from there?
Okay. So when I was in seminary, it's generally a 3-year program for Master of Divinity, about 92 graduate hours. And so think about this. When I graduated from seminary, I was 24 years old.
Wow.
In Baptist. And in what Baptist church, and single.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always liked cars. I grew up around cars. I'm too small. I was too small to play football or anything. So you're talking about a young Baptist minister that liked Corvettes.
Oh no.
And just for the appreciation, just for the car, not to do anything, ungodly in the car. But I knew no Baptist church was going to call a single 24-year-old male Baptist minister. So at the seminary, there were a group of chaplain recruiters that visited the seminary. One was from the Army, one was from the Air Force, and one from the Navy. And I spoke with all 3 of them. They were looking for ministers with, Master of Divinity to go into the chaplaincy. And I don't swim that well, so the Navy was out. And the Air Force, it was intriguing. However, that Army chaplain recruiter was a fast talking guy, and he just sounded good. And so the rest was history. I like the excitement in in the service, and so I was very interested, and so I joined.
Yeah, that's, those recruiters are good at that, aren't they?
They are. They are.
No, I mean, no, it's interesting because, no matter what your field, and I can completely understand, like you said, you were very young minister, unmarried. And yeah, we know how those Baptist churches love to have their ministers with families, and
yes,
they don't want you racing around in a Corvette. That's for sure. But no, so it is interesting often how we end up in the career fields that we end up in. So I can kind of understand the different direction you took. But I know when you got into the Army, once you finished your training, you were at the Armor School, which at that time was at Fort Knox, wasn't it?
Correct.
And I think it's still there, isn't it? Or they move it?
Well,
I can't.
I think they moved it to Fort Hood.
Fort Hood.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't remember. I just remember it was at Fort Knox when I was in too.
Yes.
So you were there where you taught professional military ethics, leadership, and ethical decision making.
Yes.
Which I can completely see as a definitely an appropriate subject for a chaplain to teach. So what was that like when you got out in the military or in the Army around the young soldiers? And you started teaching. How did they receive you? What was it like for you?
Well, first of all, most of the soldiers were surprised to see a chaplain my age.
Yeah.
Because at that time, and it's probably the same now, the average age of a chaplain entering active duty is somewhere in the 40s.
Wow.
And here I was, 24. So I was warmly received, and I could identify with them because, there were a lot of young soldiers, and I was relatively, young, and not as young as the private first class, the second class, and third class, specialists that were coming in, because, those individuals were in their late teens, around 20. Yeah. So they seemed to appreciate having a chaplain that seemed to be interested in some of the things that they were. I really liked being around the soldiers, running in formation, and we just have some everyday conversations. So I was received well. And Paul, I want to mention that the first sergeant at my very first assignment taught me a lesson that I have never forgotten. And during the introduction, you said something that reminded me of that. What he told me is, I forgot what I was doing, but he said, "Chaplain, if it ain't broke, don't fix it." And when you think about all of the wisdom wrapped up in that one statement, it's just a treasure of wisdom.
Yeah, I learned something. I guess you could say the same thing from my second first sergeant when I got back from Korea, and he gave me some wise advice one night standing out there freezing to death in an artillery position, in the middle of the night waiting to move our battery in at night. We were freezing to death, and he was standing there, and he says, "Holbert, are you going to stay in the Army?" And I told him, I said, I don't know, First Sergeant. I hadn't made up my mind yet. He said, "Well, let me tell you, if you do, get the heck out of this because it'll kill you." I sound like an old first sergeant, doesn't it?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So, first sergeants are good at giving sage advice. I can tell you.
Yes.
But no, and I can understand, the soldiers identifying with you, because I have to tell you, if I had been there and you'd have come in and I was an older soldier, I would have probably asked you the same question I asked a lieutenant walking into my S3 shop right before I retired as an ops NCO for a brigade in Germany. And, he was a young guy coming in there, second lieutenant. I said, Lieutenant, I said, I just got one question for you. Does your mom know you're over here dressed up playing Army? He looked just like a young boy in that uniform. So,
Yeah.
but it's great. I mean, you guys, like I said, the chaplains did so much, and during your career, I see that you went to, of course, a number of the courses that are required, the basic course, your advanced course, some of the colleges you had to go to, and you spent time at Fort Knox and in Germany and Fort Monmouth and South Korea, which I had 3 tours over there myself.
Yes.
It was always an interesting place. And you were the division chaplain of the first ID at Fort Riley, and I actually retired from the first ID in Germany.
Oh, really?
When I retired. So you and I kind of chewed some of the same ground during your career.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, is there a memorable assignment that you had that stood out above the rest?
I would say all of my assignments were great assignments. They were really good. I enjoyed every one of them, and they were unique in their own way. Perhaps it was the one assignment that I did not want to go on, but I went on naturally. And that was when I was assigned to Korea.
Yeah.
And I wasn't real enthusiastic about going to that assignment because it was an unaccompanied assignment. You would go to Korea alone. You couldn't take your family, and I wanted to spend as much time with the family as possible.
Yeah.
And we had our young daughter was in elementary school at that time. So, but when I got to Korea, though I missed my family, that was one of the most rewarding assignments, ministry-wise, that I had during my Army career. You think about the soldiers that go over to Korea. Everyone is lonely. If you're married, you have your family. And I conducted a chapel worship service, a Protestant service. And I would say to the congregation, and it was well attended, in essence, I would preach to them, say, whatever you do, don't do anything in Korea that will jeopardize your family back home.
Yeah.
Be faithful to your family, to your spouse. And when my wife and I, sometimes we're over to Fort Belvoir, and if we're in the commissary, and this has happened several times, and a person will walk up to me and say, Chaplain Nichols. And I'm looking at the person trying to get my memory intact. And several times they said to me, if it had not been for what you told us in Korea during that church service, I don't think I would have made it through with a clear conscience. And that meant so much to hear that, because often, when you're a chaplain and you want to do everything that you can to try to help, the military service members to be successful, to be happy, to have the freely exercise their religious faith, which is a First Amendment right, along with, with the freedom of speech. And so that assignment afforded me the greatest impact.
Yeah.
Opportunity to have the greatest impact on soldiers than any other assignment in my career.
Yeah, I was a glutton for punishment. I did 3 tours over there during my time, and but you know what? I have to tell you, I like the duty over there because of the mission. So yeah, for me, I thought it was pretty rewarding myself.
Yes.
We're gonna, Delton, we're gonna take just a quick break.
Okay.
And we're gonna hear from our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to continue on because I want to hear about what you've been doing since you got out of the Army, and we'll share that with our audience. So for those of you that are out there, hold on, and we'll be right back.
In service of our nation, you gave everything you had. You sacrificed your comfort, your peace, and sometimes even your well-being. Over 3 decades, Hill and Ponton has helped to be a guiding light for veterans seeking their rightful disability benefits. When our heroes are in need, we are not just lawyers. We're an ally, a team who understands the struggles you faced. If you're a veteran seeking the benefits you deserve, let us stand with you on this journey, because every battle deserves a hero, and no hero should fight alone.
Living in a world filled with lunacy, it seems that stress and turmoil follow us everywhere we go. Perhaps it's gotten to the point where you wish you could turn off the distractions of daily living and have a good laugh. Well, we have a recommendation for you. Pick up a copy of The Dunce Cap, a humorous and satirical look at American society and the follies of our culture. Join the author Paul Holbert as he takes you on a trip through the nonsensical and often ridiculous practices of our everyday lives, from political correctness and our legal system to the folly of the media and our obsession with reality television. See how these and other outrageous practices of everyday people make us a perfect cast for the next slapstick sitcom. So go ahead, you know you need it. Take a frank look at the more nonsensical side of American society and see why we are prime candidates for the stool in the corner and the dunce cap that sits on top.
All right, welcome back, everyone. And for those of you out there that have been watching, you know you're watching the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. And of course, our guest tonight is retired Army Chaplain, Lieutenant Colonel Delton Nichols. And before the break, Delton was sharing with us some of his experiences in the military and told us a little bit about his most rewarding assignment in Korea and some of the things that the soldiers shared with him. So, Delton, I know that right now you're currently the associate minister of the Alfred Street Baptist Church in Alexandria, Virginia, right?
Yes, one of the ministers.
So you're continuing that, but when you first got out of the Army, you did just like I did, as a lot of veterans do. You picked up a career with the federal government and became a real estate assessor in real estate assessment in Washington, D.C. Could you share a little bit about that with us and what you were doing?
Sure. So that was at the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And when I joined, became an employee there, I entered HUD as a training specialist.
Yeah.
In my training background in military teacher professional, ethics, ethical decision making, just war theory, and those subjects, it gave me a lot of experience on 2 separate assignments for a total of about 6 years of doing that. And so that easily translated into the training arena, in the federal government. And so I was there, and I had the opportunity of working with some of the most wonderful people. You know, during my military career, you meet people that you will never, ever forget.
Yeah.
And I mean, those military buddies are just golden. But I can say that the people that I worked with and worked for in the federal government was a wonderful group of people. And after doing training at HUD, I became an assessment manager. And what we were doing is all of the properties at HUD, like the multifamily housing, assisted housing, where vouchers and the subsidized housing and public housing. The organization that I was in did assessments. We did a physical assessment of the property, the conditions, so to ensure that the residents there in HUD housing were living in decent, safe, and sanitary housing. And we also did a financial assessment. They would have to submit their financial documents to HUD. There was a management assessment, a resident assessment, where we surveyed. We sent out about close to 700,000 surveys by mail a year, and they would complete them and send them back at that time to the contractor. And we also did income matching, to ensure that people living in subsidized housing were entitled to it, to ensure that we didn't have anyone making $200,000 a year living in HUD subsidized housing.
Yeah.
And so, that particular, career at HUD was very rewarding because working there, I definitely had the feeling that I was doing something, to help the people who were in need of assistance. And with my colleagues that I was working with, we were laser focused on that mission, and we had a lot of fun doing it. So it was just very, very rewarding.
Yeah. So, I have to tell you, mentioned that some of the people you worked with at HUD, were just some of the best people that, you had been around.
Mhm.
And I have to tell you, I mean, in my 22 years working in the federal government as well, I have to say one of my most rewarding agencies I worked at, and I worked at 5 different ones, was the VA itself.
Mhm.
And those people that I worked with at the VA, and there I was a veteran.
Mhm.
Some of them were not veterans, but I have to tell you, I saw the same thing. I mean, they took what they did so seriously
Yes.
about trying to help the veterans
Mhm.
and the customers who came to the agency, but of course, especially the veterans. And they had that focus on the mission to where you see some really good people. So yeah, I saw some of that same, I guess you could say, that mindset
Mhm.
during my career with the federal government as well.
Right.
So you retired from there in what, 2018, right?
That is correct.
Yeah. So you've still been pretty busy since then, because looking at what I got in your bio, Vice President of the Mid-County Civic Association of Prince William County, and you remember the Prince William County Police Department Citizen Advisory Board. I mean, you've been pretty busy since during all that time. What are some of the things that you do in those positions?
Yeah, well, with the Mid-County Civic Association, we make sure that the citizens in the county are informed about what's going on in the county, the development wise, and we have an interest to to keep the county beautiful, in and just give input even to the Board of County Supervisors on land use. And we get this information from the citizens when we have our meetings, and our meetings go about 2 hours. So we get all kind of feedback, and we share this feedback with the county Board of County Supervisors. And in the Mid-County Civic Association, it's a very respected organization. Now, with the police, Prince William County Police, the Citizen Advisory Board, we we advise. Anyway, we have a meeting every other month, and with the chief of police and his staff, and our chief of police is Peter Newsham, who was formerly the chief of Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a briefing at those meetings, and any input that we have, opportunity to ask questions, and we take this information, we share information, and then we take information back from those briefings and share it with our organizations, whether it's the Mid-County Civic Association. Take, for example, I'm also the president of our homeowners association, and we have 216 homes in the development that we live in. And it's when citizens are informed, they
Mhm.
in a much better position to do what needs to be done and have the appreciation for what is being done. And again, there's never a dull moment, and it's just very rewarding. And to me, I'm doing something that will, I think, will add value to to the community, to the county, and that's very rewarding.
Yeah, and so I wanted to ask you, I'm familiar, of course, with Prince William County and the police department since I live same county I live in, of course.
Oh, okay.
But do you ever perform any other, how should I say, related chaplain type of services or duty for them, or do they have a police chaplain with the county police?
Well, with the police, there are chaplains, and the chaplains are considered employees, but it's a non-paid position.
Okay.
And I considered strongly considered, serving in that capacity as one of the chaplains. However, I've been so busy doing some other things that that I just didn't have the bandwidth to work that in. For example, I'm also on a roster. There's one of the chaplains for Sunrise Living Facility, a wonderful community in Fairfax County, and
Yeah.
that facility is called the Fairfax. And so I am the worship leader there, maybe 1 to 2 times a month, along with about 4 other chaplains, and we're on a roster. And each one of us will lead the Protestant congregation in worship, so the residents there don't have to drive, 5-10 miles to go to a church, and and that is just. And Paul, I may add that I've met some of the most wonderful people at that community, and I know people there who have given me firsthand information. My wife and I. There was a veteran there who was at Pearl Harbor when Pearl
Oh,
Harbor was bombed. Now think about that.
yeah.
When you listen to members of that community, and you just get such an appreciation
Yeah.
for their patriotism, for their loyalty to this nation, and I just find myself in awe of what they have done and what they are still doing, and how they are concerned about our nation, selfless service all the way. And
Yeah.
so that is so very, very inspiring.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I actually have my Pearl Harbor shirt on tonight.
Oh, okay.
But no, you're right, because I've had a 100-year-old World War II veteran on the show.
Yeah,
Very interesting gentleman to talk with, and of course he's still alive and going.
wonderful.
And I've had a Korean War veteran, and so you're right. And being able to talk to some of those veterans is always very interesting.
Yes,
I have to say, your family's been pretty busy. You mentioned your wife. I know Laura. Of course, she's been on my show
yes.
because she grew up in as a military brat, they call them. And there's the information. I wanted to put that out again. Her book, Military Brats, Well-Traveled Lives, by your wife, Laura Nichols. It's available on Amazon.com. So for anyone who'd like to go out there and take a look, just a reminder, we reminded the folks, she was on just as it came out a little while back. But I wanted to remind them because she's busy with her book. And I see, you have 2 daughters also, and, it's incredible to see, what they've accomplished, and, going to, getting their graduate degrees, a PhD. One of your daughters got a PhD. Is it Tiffany from Harvard?
Yes.
Um, And then, of course, your other daughter, Darian, is that how you pronounce it?
That's correct.
Yeah, and she's got her graduate degree as well. So, you guys are just on a roll there in your family. And, my hat's off to you for what you've been able to do and accomplish, not only just personally, with your own personal life and career, but the success of your family and being able to watch your children go on and be successful. It's a credit to, I think it's a credit to you. It's a credit to the type of man that you are and the man that you came through with the military and all of that. And, I just want to congratulate you on all those successes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
It's always great to be able to talk to someone who, like I said, you and I have chewed some of the same dirt through our careers.
Yeah.
I also started out, I spent 20 years as a secondary career after I finished the military too, as an adjunct, as your wife does.
Yes.
And I got my first start in the civilian sector because of training, because of my military background.
Yes.
So, you and I have just kind of been very close in some areas, the way things have worked out. And it's really great to see how things have gone. I just want to tell you, Delton, my hat's off to you. Thank you so much for your service and what you've done through the military, and, your work as a chaplain, and even now still continuing on with the Alfred Street Baptist Church in Alexandria as you continue your mission. I want to ask you one more question, though, before we leave. And I think I'm kind of interested in what kind of profound answer you're going to give here based on your background. But I asked all my guests, if you had one mission, if you had one message that you would like to share and leave with our audience, what would it be?
Okay, I think that message would be, we have such a wonderful country filled with wonderful people. And I think that one of the greatest things that we can do is to be in service to each other.
Yeah.
And, that's a scripture, greater love is no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. And for our military service members, with all that they do, I think it is just imperative that we appreciate them. And also, some people may not understand what chaplains do, but chaplains are on loan to the military by their denominational endorsing agent, and they can be pulled from the military at any time, and there's no general on active duty that can prevent that from happening. So I would just say, I hope that we are appreciative of our current active duty chaplains that are serving our military service members here in the United States and abroad throughout the world. So, again, in a nutshell, let's appreciate those guys, and because they are a treasure to all of us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good thought, because like I said, I saw some chaplains do some really great things during my time in the military as well. And you guys really make a big contribution to the units, and not only that, to the leadership, because I know a lot of us appreciated, the help that we got from you in dealing with the soldiers and things that happened, and, it just made things so much easier. I want to thank you so much for spending the time with us this evening to come on the show.
My pleasure.
And, you're going to have to definitely, I'm sure your wife will watch the show, so I want to take this opportunity to give her a big hello, and tell her that I wish her success with the book, and I really appreciate you taking the time this evening to come on, and thank you very much for your insight.
And thank you for the invitation, Paul. And thanks to CC. And it's just wonderful what you are doing. Thank you.
All right. So again, we want to thank our guest tonight, retired Army Chaplain Delton Nichols. And for those of you out there in the audience watching, don't forget, we always provide you information at the end of each show as a reference that'll be available on the website, on my page, on the Going Solo website. Veterans info, the VA now has a new welcome kit and other VA guides out there that you can go and download or print out. A lot of them are in PDF form. They will give you all kinds of information for especially those of you that are new and dealing with the VA and navigating the VA. They have guides that'll take you through the benefits. They'll take you through your VA homeowners home loan certificate, how to get it, your disability, how you handle it, training, burial rights that you have. So go out there, folks. There's a bunch of them out there that the VA just put out. So there's the information. Tell you how to find them. So take a look, see if they can help you. All right. I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. You've been watching the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. And I want to thank all of our veterans out there and their families for your service. We want to thank you for everything that you do and what you continue to do for our country. And for those of you in the audience, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you on our next show.